Welcome to the Creative Penn podcast. I'm Joanna Penn, thriller author and creative entrepreneur, bringing you interviews, inspiration and information on writing, publishing options and marketing ideas for your book. You can find the episode show notes, your free author blueprint and lots more information at thecreativepenn.com, and that's Penn with a double N. And here's the show. Hello creatives, I'm Joanna Penn and this is episode number 539 of the podcast, and it is Saturday the 13th of March 2021 as I record this. So in today's show I'm talking to Tara Cremin from Kobo Writing Life about how to be successful publishing on Kobo, and we talk about international publishing, pricing, going wide, book marketing tips on Kobo and more. So that is coming up in the interview. In publishing news, just a couple of things. Mark Dawson and the SPF team have launched hellobooks.com, a new ebook promotion service which you can go sign up for now. And this is in the same vein as BookBub and Free Booksy and Bargain Booksy, and basically a paid email newsletter blast service for readers in specific genres. And of course, it is in all of our interests to grow these kind of marketing opportunities. Most of us base our regular book promotional stuff around these types of services. So definitely check it out at hellobooks.com. Also, last week I talked about Clubhouse, the audio-only real-time social app, and I postulated that it wouldn't be that useful for us internationally because it has to be live and there's no ability to record, and that's also part of its attraction because it can be sort of secret and exclusive, but that just doesn't work when you run an international business and everyone is not on your time zone. So I also didn't really fancy building up a new network, so I did give it a go, but I just wasn't really that into it, but it does seem like it's just the start. Twitter unveiled Spaces. I mean, they've been talking about this for a while, but it's been back in the news because of Clubhouse. It looks like it will be open in April. It's open right now for some small amount of people, but Spaces will essentially be audio-only chat rooms, but it sounds like there might be an ability to record. So I definitely prefer, a Twitter product over Clubhouse, since I have spent a decade building my audience on Twitter, like literally. In fact, it might even be more than a decade. I think I got on Twitter in 2009. So Facebook is also rumoured to be building something similar. So I'm excited about this because, as I've talked about many times before, I much prefer audio to video. And you're still getting to, it's that know, like and trust aspect. Yes, video can give you that, but audio can too, because you can hear expression in my voice. And yes, there can be deep fake audio as much as deep fake video. And I kind of feel like the way we connect with audio is a very deep way. And so an audio extra, sort of a more relaxed audio style thing would be great, that I wouldn't have to edit and produce in the same way that I do the podcast. So yeah, we shall see. But I think finding ways to connect authentically with your audience is really important. And it's something that I definitely look at also for my fiction, because over the years, I just keep going back and going, I really just don't want to do videos. And they say that it's always a good thing to do, but they are not necessarily introverts or who want to bother with, putting makeup on and stuff. Anyway, there we go. That's interesting. Also, hopefully you caught my in-between-isode on blockchain for copyright protection, smart contracts, digital scarcities and nifties, which I have been told by several of you is how to pronounce NFTs. So nifties is what we now call them. Lots of you sent comments. I'm going to read a few, but you found it really interesting. So I'm so thrilled about that. I certainly had a bumper week last week on the podcast with Stephen Pressfield and then blockchain. Thank you so much. And obviously it's early for sure on these things, but my aim with these extra shows is to look to the architecture of 5 years' time, so 2025, and also a decade ahead. After all, we are in this for the long term, creatives. Also, I have to keep myself interested. Because always looking ahead, always thinking of the new thing, that is what I enjoy. I find the present state, sometimes I love the creation process, but the present state of publishing can be, not too exciting. It's just like what we do. But the future state is fascinating. Right, in my personal update this week, final finishing energy for How to Make a Living with Your Writing, the third edition, Turn Your Words into Multiple Streams of Income, which is out now. It's out today, 15th of March as this goes out, and 2021. And I will be talking more about that in a minute. The Map Walker trilogy is also now out in ebook, paperback and audiobook on all the major platforms. Looks very cool as an ebook and audiobook box set and as an omnibus print edition. I haven't got my copy yet, but it looks really good on the print files. I've got my copy in the post. It was also my birthday this week, and I was writing a lot about what Stephen Pressfield was saying, and many of you also found the interview resonated with you a lot. I always love talking to Steve. He's very honest, and he talked about your books of potential and writing the book you're scared of next. And life is ticking away, creatives, and I definitely ticked over the middle age number. So I made two decisions. So I have booked the Camino Frances in 2022, which is over 760 kilometres from the south of France to Santiago de Compostela in northern Spain, northwestern Spain. And I've been wanting to do this for 25 years. And if you've been listening to my books and travel podcast, you will know how often I talk about it and talk to other people about it. So it is booked, and obviously things might change, but if we don't put things in the schedule, we will never get to them. Like, really, you have to clear the space. And so I will be clearing the space. So I'm pretty excited about that. I also started researching the shadow book properly. Now, those of you who've been listening for years have heard me mention this a number of times, but basically I have actually started the research process in earnest. I studied the psychology of religion at the University of Oxford years ago, which is where I first read Carl Jung and really first heard of the shadow. I mean, I guess I did an A-level in the UK, that's 16 to 18-year-old. I did an A-level in psychology, so I probably heard about it then. And then I did psychology of religion and read a lot of Jung. And if you've read my Stone of Fire, it's got a lot to do with Carl Jung as well. And it's come up in my life over and over again, this idea of the shadow. And I've got a lot of personal writing on it. And so I feel like this is the book. When Steve said, you know, the books of potential, or the book that you're scared of, this is the one, because I'm afraid that I cannot do it justice. But I also feel like I've written a lot of books at this point, so it probably is time for me to try and catch the tail of the tiger. And also Jonathan and I, you know, on our walks along the canal, which we still do every day, we were talking about, well, what would you regret if you died right now? This is one of our fun conversations. But, you know, I think, I mean, the pandemic and birthdays and these things bring these questions to home. And, you know, what do we actually want to achieve? What are the books of potential? And the two things that I want to do, if I died like right now, I would be upset as I go up into the ether. I would be upset about not writing the shadow book, and I would be upset about not walking the Camino Frances. There are lots of Caminos, but this is the one I have always thought about. Obviously, I'm still going to get on with all the other things. I'm intending to get to Day of the Martyr in terms of my next fiction project, but I'm waiting for the British Museum exhibition to open post-lockdown. This might just be an excuse, but I do get so many ideas when I go to the British Museum. I've written a number of books out of the British Museum, probably one of the main ones being Day of the Vikings, which I went to a Viking exhibition, and then the book is actually set as a group of neo-Vikings storm the British Museum to rescue, to liberate one of their sort of ancient swords, and that was fun. So I love the British Museum. I also, Crypt of Bone is also based on an exhibition there. My short story, The Dark Queen, also based on an exhibition. I just find it so... And in fact, in my Brooke and Daniel series, Blake Daniel actually works at the British Museum. He's a researcher, so I'm obsessed with the place. So yes, I'm going to get into that. But I wanted to mention it because given the numbers of emails and comments and tweets, I'll read a few in a minute, but there were so many. Last week's show really resonated with many of you, and you're reflecting on this too. So this is the challenge today for you. What book are you most scared of writing? So when you're thinking about what book to write next, what are you most scared of? And if you were going to, like, if you were like, oh, I've died and now I'm going off to wherever you feel you're going off to next, what would you regret not writing or not doing if you were at that moment? And, newsflash, it's going to happen eventually, hopefully not soon, but we can't count our years into the future. We can only measure our lives by what we create over time. And yeah, I think this is so important. I'm just feeling this more and more. So there you go. I'm into it. And I have lots of ideas about how I will do the shadow book, as I care about it so much. It really is possibly the thing that I will do some limited edition hardbacks, maybe a limited edition nifty. You never know. But I'm really thinking about that. Okay, so just a couple of emails and tweets and comments. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the number of comments on the blog, on YouTube, your tweets and some emails. Lots of people emailing me about how excited they are about all these things. Casey says, I'm starting to love the idea of co-writing with AI from a few shows back. Your shows have inspired me to be less worried and afraid and more excited, and to try and understand how they work. Peter said on the blockchain and Nifty episode, this is probably one of the most interesting podcasts I've listened to in a long time. The opportunities blockchain offers are intriguing to say the least. Thank you for providing me, as usual, with a truckload of food for thought. And Imogen Clark just said, mind blown. Lots of comments on that, but also on Stephen Pressfield. Bob says, thanks for the interview. I really identified with him. He mentioned his feelings about the memoir he's writing and writing about failure. I have a lot of small wins and many failures in the memoir I'm writing. I too have had books come out that just faded away. I will listen to this podcast again because it is so full of information that I fear and face every day in my writing. And don't worry, Bob, we all have books that have just faded away. Absolutely. But I also think the encouraging thing about Steve's interview is that he, sometimes it might take 10 years. Maybe it will take 20 years. Who knows? I mean, yeah. Books don't age. I mean, they might. Well, no, that's not true. Some non-fiction books age and some fiction books age if they are written in a particular way. But people can still enjoy them years later. Jeanette said, great interview. I resonate with Stephen on so many levels. I'm up to my 5th book in a series and I am humbled to follow the muse. And finally, Stephen said, hearing another writer talk about his very personal writing trials and tribulations was my biggest takeaway. It made me feel that I was not alone. It also filled me with hope, considering that some projects can take as many as 15 years to succeed. Indeed. Well, thank you everyone for your emails and tweets and comments. I really appreciate it. So today's show is sponsored by my own book out today, How to Make a Living with Your Writing, the 3rd edition. Turn your words into multiple streams of income. This is a complete rewrite, or almost a complete rewrite, like a 95% rewrite. And there are lots more additional sections. It's about 15,000 words longer and packed with useful ways to make money with your books, as well as with other forms of income. Thanks to everyone who completed the survey. And there are lots of quotes from many of you in the book, as well as resources and ways to take the ideas further. It covers principles around mindset, as well as the practicalities, the fundamentals of your book as an intellectual property asset, ways to make more money with books, including a new section on selling direct, plus your author ecosystem, affiliate income, crowdfunding and patronage, speaking, online courses, freelance writing, merchandise and products, coaching, consulting, author services, grants, PLR and more. So out now in ebook on all the usual platforms and hopefully in your library if you'd like to borrow it. Also paperback, large print, hardback. Plus, there is a companion workbook with the questions in, so you can write your answers. You can also buy the ebook and audiobook directly from me, payhip.com/thecreativepenn, and you can use coupon LOCKDOWN, all caps, until the end of March 2021 for 50% off everything in my store, which includes all my ebooks and many of the audiobooks, which you can listen to in the BookFunnel app. The audiobook will be available on all the usual platforms in the next month as it filters through onto the various things. For all the links, go to thecreativepenn.com/make-a-living or just search How to Make a Living with Your Writing, Penn, Penn, on your favourite retailer. So thank you for everyone also supporting the show on Patreon. Thanks to new and returning patrons in the last few weeks: Karen Inglis, Natalie Roberts, Gin Holland, Ashley Henderson and Bree Dent. Thank you everyone for supporting the show on Patreon. You can support the show with a few dollars or euros or GBP or Canadian dollars a month. A few coffees a month if you're generous, and you'll get the extra monthly Q&A audio, which I will be recording this week. And you can support the show at patreon.com, patreon.com/The Creative Penn. Right, let's get into the interview with Tara. Tara Cremin is the Senior Manager for Author Experience at Rakuten Kobo, heading up the Kobo Writing Life team. Welcome, Tara.
Thanks for Joanna for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh yeah, it's great to talk about this stuff. So tell us a bit more about you and your background in writing and book selling and publishing.
Sure. So I'm originally from Ireland. I've been living in Canada for about 8 years. So my background has come from American literature. That's what I studied in university. So after that, I moved to Canada for wanting to live in a very large city, as I like to think of Ireland as one big small town. So I wanted the bigger city life. I've always been really, really interested in books and reading and book selling. And when I came here, I was super interested in how books merged with technology. So I traveled a little bit after university and read a lot of classics, mostly because that's what was left in hostel libraries back when you were trying to figure out which book to carry ones at a time. Like I just have 3 rotated and
swap them in the hostel
exactly.
for something else.
Yeah, and it was often there wasn't that much to choose from, or like you're just reading the same stuff over and over again. So when I moved to Toronto, this job opportunity came with Kobo, and I was like super interested in like ebooks, just as kind of convenience and having like all your books in one place. That was kind of interesting to me. So when I started working at Kobo, I was working as the frontline for what was brand new at the time, which was Kobo Writing Life. I was answering the emails and helping people with everything to do with uploading their books and stuff like that. And this really sparked an interest in me as like wanting to learn more about like the technicalities behind the EPUBs themselves. You know, I wanted to jump in and like fix issues rather than just sending the emails out. So joining the Kobo content team, I was able to do that. And it really kind of gave me a very quick learning. I guess a very quick lesson in publishing and Canadian publishing in general, and meeting a bunch of people that were so entrenched in the publishing industry. And personally, Kobo was great because as somebody that was new and didn't know a lot of Canadians, I was able to jump into this company and have basically a whole group of friends, because it's like, oh, I get to work with like people that like books as well. Like you just automatically have something in common, which is always I'm very grateful of. So yeah, learned a lot about publishing there, and then kind of wanted to apply this to the indie community in general, which is how I've got into the role that I'm in now. So a lot of Kobo history, but I think it's good because I get to give the expertise of like behind the book. I understand what goes in towards it, and then also understand the community in general and what we need. In a long nutshell.
No, that's great. And it is really interesting. I came to Toronto a number of, I can't remember what year it was anymore. Time seems to have gone weird in the pandemic. But I was really impressed by how lovely the Kobo team are there and how friendly everyone was. So I can imagine going there when you just arrived in the country and just feeling very welcome, which is lovely. But let's take it up a level. So in case people don't know, what is Kobo and how many countries does it reach, and what are the sort of primary markets?
Sure. So Kobo is a digital book retailer that just sells ebooks and audiobooks, and it also makes some of the best e-reading devices in the world. I would say the best e-reading devices, but there's others out there. But so we focus on digital reading. So we don't do any print books, which just really allows us to have our focus on ebooks and audiobooks alone. And we really focus on the reading experience. So everything we do is about making the reading lives better. So whether it's kind of making sure that our apps are really good, you can adjust the fonts, making sure the devices are as ergonomic as they can be. Kobo's ethos is not to get you into our site to sell you something else, because we literally just sell books. So that's what we're all about all the time. We're headquartered in Toronto, but we have a reach that's all over the world. Our parent company is Rakuten, which is Japanese e-commerce giant, and that has definitely helped us have a reach everywhere else in the world. Canada, being the home territory, is our main market. So with authors, it's very common to see that Canada would be your kind of top seller there. And then after that, like not in any particular order, but we have a good market share within Australia, New Zealand, and then in Europe, especially in like France, the Netherlands, and Italy, which is a bit of a span of countries, but we really do have a space everywhere. And we understand that book markets are kind of unique in each geo. So, book selling as a whole can be one thing, but there's nuances in every area. So we actually do have teams on the ground in certain countries, because we know that it needs kind of a personal touch. So like for Kobo Writing Life, for example, I have colleagues that are in France and in Italy and in the Netherlands. So they're really focusing on making that experience better. And that really leads to growth in these areas, that we're not just coming in and trying to give you the Canadian book experience. We want to go to Australia and give Australian readers the Australian book experience. In that kind of way. And Joanna, you often share your map. So I'm curious about what's the most surprising place that you've sold a book through Kobo?
Oh, I'm always, and at the moment I'm up to 159 countries out of 190. So I'm always thrilled with this, but I'm always impressed by how many readers there are in sub-Saharan Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, that I never think of. People often ask me about international marketing, and I'm like, well, even if your book is just available in some of these countries, if someone then opens the Kobo app, or we'll talk about partnerships in a minute, but if someone's looking for a book and they type in something on their usually mobile device, then they have a chance to find your book. So it's funny, I don't know how these readers, I mean, maybe everyone listening to the podcast is in all of these different countries, but equally it may just be search. So it's so interesting to me how far your international reach can go. But a couple of things, I just wanted to remind people that Kobo is an anagram of book.
It is.
I feel like people don't realize that. They're like, why Kobo? Like, yeah, well, there you go. So anagram book. And also, so you mentioned France, Netherlands, Italy, obviously Canada has French, Canadian. How much of the site is sort of English language, and what are the other languages that you're doing?
I don't know if I can break it down like X% is this or that, but we do have several localized stores. I want to say there's like 30 plus storefronts that we have dedicated to those countries. So whatever languages are available in those areas, we try and localize as much as possible. I was trying to think of what our latest ones added are. I'm looking at a map now. But we have very many. Actually, if the way to easily see this is if you go to kobo.com, there's a map at the top of the bar, and it'll default to where you currently are. But if you click on that, it'll lead you to a page with a bunch of other maps, and that shows you where we have localized storefronts. And then at the very bottom, there's what we call a rest of world store, where there's kind of one store to handle perhaps your sub-Saharan African readers, where they can access books there. And we're also like merchandising those spaces too. So it is a lot of trying to make the book selling experience as unique as possible in each area.
You mentioned devices, and of course, Kobo has devices, but there's also apps. And Kobo also works in global markets in a partnership model, which I think is one of the unique aspects which some other companies don't necessarily do. So what are some of the examples of the partnerships that work? And so how does this expand the reach outside of just kobo.com?
Sure. And yeah, you mentioned our app. So we have the e-reading devices, and a lot of people may not realize that we do have apps that are available to download for free on any app store. We have iOS and Android apps that we maintain. And something that's really great about those is that we have audiobooks and ebooks within one app. And also the subscription, if Kobo Plus, if that's in your area, it's all in one space on an app. So it's quite convenient. And in terms of partners, it was something that Kobo figured out very early on, that the way to really make a splash with digital publishing was to take advantage of really strategic partnerships around the world. We pride ourselves in just making friends early, the cliche of the friendly Canadian, but it kind of works. So we have lots of partners all over the world. Some of them are online commerce stores, and then some of them are brick and mortar booksellers. And we work together to offer ebooks and audiobooks to their customers. So kind of some examples of these would be Fnac in France is a partner of ours, and Fnac sells physical books, but they also sell a whole number of other products. We partner with Bol in the Netherlands, and Bol is like the Amazon of the Netherlands. I think there's 8 million families there that have bol.com accounts, and we power their ebooks and their audiobooks. Our latest partnership was with Booktopia in Australia, which is a really well-known company that does print books to kind of remote areas in Australia. I guess a lot of places are remote in Australia, but they deliver print books very easily to customers. And again, we're powering their ebooks and audiobooks. But what is interesting about some of the other partnerships that we have is that we were able to work together with what would have traditionally been considered competition. So, for example, in Mexico, we partner with both booksellers Gandhi and Perua and power both of them. And they would have kind of historically been competitors with one another, but now they come together and we offer the same ebooks. The kind of ethos is that there any kind of quote unquote independent bookstores are better kind of together rather than trying to separately take on themselves and also the beast that is Amazon. So that's sort of interesting. And then the same can be seen in Italy, where we do have two partners there, Mondadori and La Feltrinelli. So there really is this collaborative effort between like booksellers and the different e-commerce stores. But yeah, this has definitely allowed us to have more of a global footprint.
Yeah, I think that's really important because I feel like so much of the independent author community, is pretty obsessed with America, with the US sales. And of course, that is a big market and it was the first market really. And obviously it's a lot bigger than Canada and the UK and Australia. And these are all smaller markets. But the rest of the world, to me, is a big market. And I've seen myself that the percentage of sales, when I first started out in sort of 2008 to 2013, maybe, that the sales was 99% US and Amazon. And then since then, every year, the percentage has changed and more country sales are coming online. And I think we forget that a lot of the rest of the world is only just beginning to adopt digital reading, and many of us might be very used to it by now, but a lot of countries are just discovering it. And I wonder if, what do you, we weren't going to talk about the pandemic, but I have to mention it because I feel like we've heard that the acceleration of digital reading has grown incredibly during this pandemic year so far, with no end in sight. So do you see that in this sort of numbers? I didn't prep you for this beforehand, so you might not have it, but have you seen a growth in a pandemic times?
Yeah, we definitely have. I think one thing that is important to think about is that when Kobo began, I like Michael Tamlin, the Kobo CEO, he talks about this from time to time, that we always saw digital reading as a 25-year evolutionary takeover. Like this wasn't going to be something that people picked up digital reading immediately within year 1, year 2, year 3. It was always, we're always here for the long haul, that it's going to take longer for some readers to adopt. Some people will take to it really quickly, and then others will kind of be slower. So as you said, like North America might have been on the forefront of adopting digital reading very quickly, but other countries are kind of slower. And what I've definitely noticed from the pandemic is that we did a lot of campaigns, especially in Europe at the beginning of like when the lockdowns were super strict. We worked with a lot of authors and publishers there to offer books for free for those that were really stuck at home. And this began in Italy and it spread into France, and we did a number of other countries. And I think we gave away 10 million ebooks in a month, wow, which is crazy. So I think this has led to more and more people like trying digital reading for the first time. They might have been slow to do so in the past, but kind of being forced to by just not being able to physically go to a bookstore. So it has definitely accelerated what we think was already a trajectory. But yeah, it has, in the 25 years, it's probably ramped up a couple of years in terms of adoption. And we saw our customer base grow in these areas.
That's great. You also mentioned Kobo Plus. Maybe just talk a bit about that and why that might be something for the future. That's something that people are thinking about.
Yeah, I know that subscription can be a scary word to some independent authors, but it shouldn't be. I think that people, by and large, are getting used to consuming media on a subscription basis when it comes to like Netflix. I mean, I subscribe to about 4 or 5 different things. I'm a real, like, I'll have like 3 on the go, but then I'll drop one and have another one another month, between your like Spotify or like just radio subscriptions that I have or whatnot. So people are really kind of like dipping in and out. And in that term, it's kind of like a new audience. So Kobo Plus is Kobo's subscription program, and it was started in 2017, specifically in the Netherlands and Belgium because of our strong partnership with Ball there. And it actually was begun because we noticed that there was very high instances of piracy in that area, especially with ebooks. So we're like, okay, these people are reading, but they're not paying for books, but they want books. How can we kind of get them into an area where they're consuming books how they want them? And definitely launching the kind of, paying, I think it's €9 a month or something thereabouts for an all-you-can-read model, definitely was something that dug into that area. And we found it a really big success in Belgium and the Netherlands. So we've been kind of closely monitoring that, and then seeing, especially with the uptick in subscriptions in media consumption in general, kind of trying to see how this can roll out to other areas. And with that, we launched in Canada last summer, which, as I've mentioned, is our biggest market. So that was sort of an interesting thing to launch in because, first kind of predominantly English language market as well. And yeah, it's been going really, really well so far. We're seeing high conversion to like from trials to paid customers and people being really interested. And I think what's interesting to me is that when I chat to authors about this and see how their books are being read versus books are being paid for, that it's not always the same books. So in my mind, again, like this is a new customer because they're reading in different orders, and it can kind of like how an audiobook listener doesn't necessarily listen to the same things that they would read. I think I kind of find the same with subscription. So it's definitely something that is growing, and there's no exclusivity with Kobo. I should have mentioned that off the bat. That's something that we want to really like hammer out. So it shouldn't be a scary word at all. There's no requirement. If you opt your book in, you can opt your book in anywhere else. And with Kobo Writing Life authors, we also let you choose the country specifically. So if you're not too sure, you don't want to put your frontlist title in Canada, you can just do it in the Netherlands if you'd like. Try to make it as easy as possible for you to try it out.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, personally, I think subscription is here to stay. And as you say, we all have it for TV and for music. It's something ridiculous now, like over 90% of music consumption is subscription based. And we tend to lag behind the music industry by 5 years, I guess, in the book industry. So, and yes, there are challenges, but as you say, I think that if we want to build a readership, then having our books available in these different ways is really important. I also think you mentioning piracy is an important thing. I feel the same about books not being available in various countries. So, for example, even when I lived in Australia, like over a decade ago, I'm not a pirate. I never have. Obviously, I buy books. But the only time I have ever felt like, well, I should just download this from a pirate site is when there was a book I really, really wanted that had been published in America and was not going to be available in Australia for 18 months. And I was like, that's ridiculous. In publishers, this was traditionally published. This happens all the time, right? But it made me think, okay, that's really interesting that someone like me who has money buys books. And because I cannot get this in the way that I want to read it, in the country that I'm reading, on the device that I'm reading, then I'm thinking about that. So this is another reason why I'm so passionate about having our books available on all platforms, in all countries, in all formats, is, this means that people, I think most book readers are wonderful, and they will, if they can get the content they want and they are paying something for it, whether it's a percentage of the subscription or what, then that can actually really help. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do think behavior has really changed, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even personally myself, I'm a huge fan of Graham Norton's fiction books. I think he is a terrific writer. His book is not coming out in Canada until June, and it came out in September in the UK and Ireland. So like my mom is going to have to like send me the physical version of the book until I can buy it as an ebook here, which is so frustrating.
It is, and I wish the publishing industry. I was at a conference called the Future Book in November here in the UK. I wasn't there physically; it was online. But they would, they were talking about this newfangled thing where you could publish globally on day one, and I was just sitting there in the virtual audience, banging my head against the wall, going, "Seriously, guys, like catch up to technology. This is what you're meant to do." And I know traditional publishing is much more territorial, but I think this is really important. With one click of a button, you are publishing to 190 countries through Kobo, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I mean, wherever you want to choose, like you can choose the areas if you don't want to, but we would encourage, like, why wouldn't you go worldwide unless you've sold your British rights or something? But yeah, you can choose to easily sell to 190 countries.
Yay! So what are some of the benefits of publishing direct with Kobo Writing Life, as opposed to going through some of the wonderful distributors that we know and love? What are the benefits?
Yeah, I think the benefit of coming direct, first and foremost, is you're going to earn more money. The distributors and aggregators are great, and they can get you into places that are really, really difficult. And especially as a wide author, it can be very hard to balance like multiple storefronts and all these things. So I would definitely recommend using distributors for ease. But where you can come direct, if you're going to sell more, you're not going to forego an aggregator fee. So we're going to give you 70% of royalties for any books that are priced $2.99 up, and that's dollars, or I believe it's $1.99 GBP. And we don't have any upper price cap. So that would be the first point, because I think money is very important to everyone. So that would be point number one. And then the next fact that I would have about coming direct is that you get access to unique tools that you can't get through an aggregator. So one example of this would be our promotional tab. So this is a tool that we've created that allows authors to apply for promotional opportunities in prime spots on the Kobo store. And it's only available when you come direct to us. So it's this unique kind of little give back, because we have access to these promotions and can work with you on that. So you'll need to be direct. And then in addition to this, though, we also do a number of promotions outside of this tool that are also unique to KWL authors. So one of those examples is that we do multi-author buy more, save more promotions quite regularly. And those do really, really well with our readers, because if it's a romance, buy more, save more, and you're there with a number of other romance authors, it's kind of a boost on sales, because there's so many of the same genre in one area. And then again, these are kind of unique to Kobo Writing Life authors. I have two more points. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot,
great.
But I'll keep going. And then one other thing is that we also have direct audiobook upload. So if you have an audiobook that you want to sell wide, you can easily do that through Kobo Writing Life. And because we do everything in-house, your audiobook is published. We say within 24 to 72 hours, but in practice, it is often within 24 hours, which is very, very fast. And then you can also avail of unique audiobook promotions. They're not within our promotion tool yet, but that is something that we would love to add in the future. But right now we have them run through our team. And then we also have promotions that we work through with libraries with our partnership with Overdrive, who we have a kind of unique and complicated but great relationship with. So we do library promotions on a regular basis. And then the last point that I would have is just coming direct to Kobo. It gives you access to the Kobo Writing Life team. So we're a team that really is entrenched in all things indie publishing. We love keeping abreast of everything that's going on within the publishing industry in general, but specific to indie. It's really fun for us. It's fast moving. It's one of the things I enjoy most about working on this. And we really care about books, and we want to help authors establish their audience on Kobo. But also want to try and give you advice about other platforms as we hear them. So we often do free consultations with authors that we can give one-on-one advice with. So if you're interested in this, keep an eye on our newsletter, because that's where we'll tell more about that. But we definitely, I would say, coming direct, take advantage of the team that we have there, because we definitely want to help you succeed on Kobo.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And you have a really lovely team and very helpful. And it's very difficult starting out as an indie author. So many things to learn. And of course, we're trying to share lots of us share our tips and things. But sometimes you just want to talk to someone about your book or your series or whatever. So I think that's really important. So, and I would also add that the promotions tab, I did it today. I have a reminder on my calendar every 3 weeks that I go in, I apply for loads of promotions, and then in another 3 weeks I apply for a load more. And obviously you don't get every single promotion you apply for, but that to me is one of my recommendations for selling on Kobo, is go in and apply for as many as you can, and so you might get some of them. So what are some of the other common elements of success for indie authors who are doing well?
Yeah, indie authors do really well on Kobo in general, and I think they represent 1 in 4 books sold in English language is a Kobo Writing Life title, which is a huge number and something we're really proud of, especially internally as we talked about Kobo. So it's great to see indies being so well represented. And as mentioned, with the increase in Europe, this is only increasing in the other languages as well. So I'm excited to see what this year has has coming in terms of the sales there. In terms of genre, it's kind of difficult to have a one blanket, like on Kobo X sells and this doesn't do as well, because each country is so nuanced. But just to give a general answer, we kind of, romance always does very, very well in any of the range of the countries that we have. The subgenres might differ from, what people want to read in Canada might not necessarily be the same type of romance as they want in France or the Netherlands. But overall, it's a very strong genre, and I think followed by suspense, mystery, thriller. But that's not to say that there's any bad genre to be writing in. It really, really changes from country to country. So, for example, in Japan, the readers are manga obsessed. It's like mostly manga that's being read there, and we even have different elements in our Kobo devices to make them more aligned for manga, specifically in that market. So it does kind of change. So I would say there is no bad genre, and definitely write what you're into would be my advice. In terms of what our readers are really looking for, they're big fans of serialized content. And we do the best that we can on our side to try and sell serialized books. So if you have a multi-book series and a customer has finished book 1 and there's one available next, we'll try and prompt them to buy that next book. They're also really easily laid out on the product page on kobo.com that this is a series of books. Here are the other links. Please, go to the next book. So I think it's kind of the same advice that I think for general writers is that the more books you have to sell, the easier it is to sell them. That's the same on Kobo. So if your books or the story that you want to tell kind of lends itself to a series, I definitely recommend exploring that option. I don't think there's any winning tactics in terms of length. We have authors that they're writing book 15 of a series, but then we have people that, only write trilogies. So I think it depends on the story, and I guess the genre as well. But definitely serialized content is something that our readers respond very well to.
And then I think pricing, because you mentioned free earlier, and I've had perma-free books available, for 7 years, I think now, and perma-free when you're wide on Kobo and Apple and these other stores can be really good, because there are often promotional opportunities for free first in series. So what do you think? I mean, and many authors struggle with the idea of free. So any thoughts on pricing?
As we're at the beginning of the year, I've been looking at last year to see how things are going. And it's been really interesting to see the read through when you're looking at a free book. or if we're doing different reviews with authors and their top selling title is book 2 in a series, like that just really goes to show how well that free book does. So it's still something that is a very viable marketing option, and something that I think is unique to independent authors, because traditional publishers are still terrified of free. But I don't know if I've talked to an author that has never gotten the value back from a free book. So I definitely think that that's worthwhile. And it doesn't have to be a perma-free. I think it all goes down to your marketing plan in particular. So if you wanted to just have it free for a certain amount of time, you can do that through our tools. And then we also have promotions around the free page that on Kobo that are updated on a weekly basis. So we have different genre options. So if you wanted to have your book free for a week and be featured there, you could definitely apply for that. And we see some good read through onto that page. And we also do some advertising in the back end to try and drive readers to that free page as well. So we're definitely trying to move people there. In terms of pricing, that's like not free. I would say to think about things globally. I mean, we've talked about all the different countries that are there, and just make sure that you're not just setting the price in one currency and then letting it auto convert for the others. You want to set a quote unquote attractive price. As consumers, we're trained to respond well to a 99-cent price point. So I would ensure that at least in your main currencies that you're doing this. So I would say kind of, your main currencies would be Canadian dollar, US dollar, the euro, Great British pounds, Australian dollar, and New Zealand dollars. So at least have those set up. And if you have time, I would set your price in all of the currencies. So like there's a reason that we offer 16 currencies. We really want you to utilize them and set the most attractive price points there that are available.
I do feel like sometimes it's really hard to know what the price should be, because some currencies are, what I might have as a £2.99 book might be 900 in another currency, or 1,000 in another currency, and you're like, I don't even know what number that should be. So do you have guidance on Kobo Writing Life for what international prices should be, dependent on what the price in US dollars is, for example?
Yeah, I believe that we do we give you a rough auto convert in all of the currencies to kind of like, this is the same equivalent value. So you can use those, but like those might not be the most attractive. It could be, if you're setting Canadian $3.99, that might be in US $2.67. So we would say go in and kind of round them up and see how they're priced. But as I mentioned earlier about that flag option to see all the countries that we have Kobo's store available in, if you're not too sure about your pricing option, or like if it's a competitive one in the market, I would have a browse around any of the markets that we have. So if you were wanting to see what's priced in Canadian, go in and see similar authors to you and what their pricing looks like, because I think that's a valuable tool.
Absolutely. And then the opposite end for me is the big mega box set. Obviously 3-book box sets do well everywhere, but because you have no upper limit on the royalty, I've got my 9-book box. I think I might even have a 10-book box set now, but a mega wow. box set, where I sell it for something like $24. And of course they don't sell loads, but when one does sell, you get a good whack of money. Whereas if you put that on Amazon, for example, you can't price above $9.99, or you only get the 35% or whatever it is. So for me, having the ability to do a mega box set is great, because occasionally people do just buy that, and that's a big payout. And also people doing paid ads, for example, on Facebook, direct to Kobo for Canada, that is something that can do really well. And it's good you do box set sales as well through the merchandising. And so I find that a combination of free and also box sets and mega box sets, and just playing with things a lot more, which we can do as indies when you have a number of books.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good advice. The box sets do really well on Kobo. I'd love to survey our customers to learn more about why they love them so much. But all I know is that they do. They tend to see the box sets in terms of convenience rather than just as a bargain. So it's almost as if the readers just want to have their books in one place. So yeah, I would definitely, if you are a serialized author, I would definitely have some box sets up. I know, Joanna, you and I chatted about this before about like what's the secret number, and 3 does seem to be the secret number with box sets. I don't think there's much science behind that, just that people respond to it. But like you said, we do see books that are up to like 10, 15 book box sets that you can price at a high price point.
Yeah, those are really good. Now, I did want to ask you about nonfiction because and it may be because there are no print books available and a lot of people buy nonfiction in print, but I've certainly struggled more with nonfiction. I sell mostly fiction on Kobo. So any thoughts on selling more nonfiction, or, people who write in genres that are not the romance / mystery thriller / sci-fi?
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely seen a big spike in nonfiction over the past few months, which I think we can kind of see mostly due to political book releases and some high-profile memoirs, Obama, for example. But it just shows that there is a big audience for nonfiction on Kobo. I think with selling nonfiction as a digital form, it can be difficult, as some nonfiction books, they're a bit more complicated than your average EPUB. I don't know whether people are not people, but Kobo readers are slower to gravitate towards nonfiction for that reason. So, your average ebook file is just rolling text, but with nonfiction, there's often footnotes, annotations, like images or graphs and things like that can be, you want to be able to browse and flip through the book. So with this in mind, our design team, just one thing to highlight as well is that with Kobo, we do it all in-house. So, we're all working remotely at the moment, but in our office in Toronto, we actually have the e-reader designers are there working next to the people that are building the website, working next to the people that are doing all our marketing and so on and so forth. But so we get a really interesting insight into how things are created. And our design team spent a lot of time working on making the digital reading experience as easy and as similar as the physical one. And I kind of just wanted to talk about one innovation for this that I think is related to nonfiction. So we have this, we were calling it deep reading. I'm actually not too sure what the public name for it was, but it was just basically making it a bit easier to browse through a book. So we introduced this browse window. So if you have your giant or even your small nonfiction book open and you're reading a chapter, but you want to flip back to something that was mentioned in a previous chapter or even a book note, we've designed this feature that it'll pop up another window. So it actually keeps your page in the background and it lets you scan through the book. So you can have a little flip at the beginning, flip at the back, and you don't lose your page at all. And then you go back to it. So I think that kind of one thing that Kobo is trying to do is really design our products to be for the nonfiction reader. And I'm a big nonfiction reader myself, and I think this is extremely helpful. So I think kind of innovating products like this and then putting more of an emphasis on our store would be something, and kind of seeing an increase in nonfiction in the future, I hope, at least. Is that helpful, Joanna? I don't know if that's answered the sales question specifically, but
yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, and I think the main thing is to consider, different ads for different platforms as well. So, for example, I use BookBub ads to the BookBub pay-per-click ads to drive people to Kobo, and also the other stores, obviously. But that there are lots of ways to drive readers to the different pages, whatever genre it is, there are ways to advertise to that reader. And so I think that's important to keep in mind. But one thing I did want to ask is that some people, that it seems to be this discussion of cycling in and out of Kindle Unlimited. So people are like, oh, I really want to be wide, but I'm just going to cycle my books in and out of Kobo and Apple and other places. Now, you mentioned this sort of long-term business model, really focusing on that long-term. And for me, I've found that my Kobo audience is a slow growth thing. It's not like, bang, I upload my book and sell a ton, although I don't think that's true on any store. But can you talk a bit about this cycling, or what is the best attitude to have around putting your books up on Kobo and building a readership for the long term?
Yeah, I would definitely say that it's not a get quick, I always say this wrong, a get rich quick scheme. Publishing is kind of a general is going to be a slow burn of a career, and you really want to build up those dedicated readers. So if you're publishing wide, I think the main factor is that you're mitigating risk. You're not relying on your income coming from one place. It's been very tumultuous, the world has in the past year. And if one thing happens to one retailer, that really can affect your income. So I think, from a practical standpoint, it really is just better for you as an author to have many streams of income rather than just one stream of income. It does make it harder, as you do have to then manage many stores, but it does greatly reduce the risk. And then in terms of coming in and out of KU, you have to keep in mind that it really affects your ranking, and temperature is what we kind of call the ranking on Kobo. So our store it's not strictly based on sales in how we kind of populate book lists. When you put in a title or you're searching by genre and the top ones that come up, it's not just best selling. We also take into account like how many people are searching for that book, how many people are clicking on things. So we're taking into account the temperature of the book in general. And if your books are, if you are just releasing pre-orders and then the second the on sale date is come, that you're going straight to KU, that's really going to reduce your temperature as an author as a whole. And then you have to build it up again. So it definitely is better to keep things wide, to just keep your visibility there and to know where readers can get your books. That's not to say that, there's anything wrong. Like, these are all personal business decisions that if you want to decide to publish a book first in KU and then come wide, like it's completely up to you. One thing that I would say is like take advantage of the team that Kobo Writing Life has, because I do think that there is a little bit of a difference between an author that has been exclusive for some time and is now trying to hit the wide audience than one that is publishing day one and trying to learn everything and hitting everything. So we've definitely been seeing an increase in people deliberately wanting to increase their wide readership. So hit us up and we'll try and see what we can do, because we know that you have an audience. We just need to find your audience on Kobo. So that's what I would say. It's just really important to stay wide as much as possible. I know that Google and Apple would give you the exact same advice for your books there, that it just wrecks algorithms if you're coming in and out.
Yeah, or even just in general. So I also sell direct from my website. And the fact is, if you give readers a choice, so every time I launch a book, I have the big links, like the 5 big stores of which you guys are one. And I have those links. And then I have my 6th link is going to be my own website, and people can buy it direct from me. And if you start training readers to buy from you on various platforms, you're going to attract more people, and and more email subscribers on those platforms. And in fact, that's another good reason to do the perma free and have an email sign up at the back of your perma free. You will start attracting readers on those platforms. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, you can reach a few readers with your first promotion, and then you just have to look at it as, okay, well, maybe my email list has been Amazon up to this point, and now I'm trying to build a readership on Kobo, for example. So I have to do that slowly. I have to build up this readership. So that's the attitude I have, which is I want to keep training my readers to buy on the different platforms rather than just one of them, and that takes time, basically.
Absolutely. And I think one thing as well is that there's a lot of advantages to going wide. Like, I talked about some of the partners that Kobo has. So, I wouldn't just think of Kobo as one store. There's multiple stores that your books are going to be available. So, for example, I was chatting to an author recently and just suggested, I was like, oh, how about, your Facebook ads in Australia? Did you know that you can also target Booktopia? You don't have to just target Kobo. And they made a change and very quickly had a sale as a result of that, So there is definitely opportunities where you can find them in wide. It's not necessarily just one space. I didn't sell one thing on Kobo. It's kind of like try and think about what you can do in all of the arenas that are available.
Fantastic. Right. We're almost out of time, but I did have one more question, because you have the Kobo Writing Life podcast, and you also have YouTube videos, and you've been doing this now personally on behalf of Kobo for a while. And I wondered, what have you personally learned about this kind of content marketing, and sort of any tips for introvert authors who might want to get themselves on audio and video?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of slow to being on video myself. It was nerve-wracking at the beginning. I mean, you always just seem like a pro, Joanna. So I would look up to you to kind of see what
Over a
Joanna's doing
decade.
on her video. Yeah, exactly. I think in terms of podcasting, it really helps that our podcast has been around for such a long time. It's in its 8th year. So I think that knowing that you have this audience that really wants to listen to it makes it a little bit easier when you're talking to them. But I think just trying to be yourself and be a bit comfortable with it would be my tip. Our KWL hosts, Stephanie and Joni, I think they do a great job at making it very conversational. And yeah, just making the people feel at ease. But the one thing that I've noticed, well, I just did it there. I'm really trying to get better at my ums and slow down and listen to the bad habits that I have, which I think I say a lot as an Irishism, but I'm really trying to reduce that. So that would be some advice, is maybe look at what you're doing in terms of speaking and kind of trying to see if you're being as clear as possible. And then one of the greatest things I think for doing this sort of content marketing is really listening. And a lot of people aren't good at listening. These are conversations, so you need to take the time to listen to what people are saying, and really think about your answers when things are going, but also just have fun and share your personality. It's a chance for us to not just be Kobo. We get to show our own fun, things that we like every now and again. So yeah, I don't know if that's super helpful, because I still am learning how to get better at content marketing.
But I think that is the point. It's about learning how to get better by doing it, as opposed to trying to do lots of courses on things. I mean, sometimes you can learn more by doing one terrible video or one interview and just going, oh, that was so bad. But then you know what's bad, so you can do better next time. So, for example, I remember years ago, I interviewed someone and I hadn't done enough checking on them beforehand, and they were just monosyllabic. They would answer with a yes or a no. And that is such hard work as an interviewer. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, this isn't the way it works. I don't even know if I published that interview because it was so bad. And then I came off and went, okay, so I need to, as an interviewer, I need to make sure that someone, like you said, it's a conversation. It goes backwards and forwards. And especially with a host like I am, I also want to talk about my own thoughts too. So having a conversation is so important. But as you say, trying to get more comfortable with who you are and just being yourself, and that can be the hardest thing, but it is the most important thing.
Yeah. And I think that, you'll make mistakes, and that's fine. But the more that you do it, the more comfortable you are, like actually starting something. It's the same concept of a blank page. Once you get doing it, it's fine. But I remember the very first podcast interview I did, it was with the the SPA girls in New Zealand. And when we signed off and we said goodbye, I hung up, and they were like, oh, you didn't need to leave. It's just like goodbye to the recording. And I was like, oh, I'm really sorry. I was just like, but that's the end of our chat, So you make mistakes and you learn, and I don't know. It's just not. I don't take it too seriously, I think.
And actually, that's really funny, because that is a very good tip. And in fact, it can be, as a new author or someone who's not very well known, that can be your chance to actually have a chat with the host and potentially ask them follow-up questions or whatever you like. I mean, you and I had a chat beforehand, but I quite often stay on the phone with people afterwards and have a chat. And that's actually the way we build relationships. So that's a really good tip. And I don't even think about that anymore, because I've been doing it for so long. So that was very valuable. Right. So where can people find the KWL team and everything you guys do online?
Sure. Our website itself is kobo.com. And if you want to self-publish with us, it's kobo.com/writing life. And you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. They're all under kobo.com. And the kobo.com podcast is the title. So Kobo.com. I said that wrong. The Kobo Writing Life podcast is the name of the title. So basically, if you type Kobo Writing Life into your search engine, you will find us.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for your time, Tara. That was great.
All right. Thanks, Joanna.
So I hope you enjoyed the interview with Tara today and that it gave you some ideas for publishing wide and marketing your books with Kobo Writing Life. In next week's show, I'll be talking to Debbie Young about how to write cozy mystery. One of the genres, I mean, it's a perennial good seller, cozy mystery, but it's definitely one of the genres going through a boom right now as people crave feel-good, gentle stories to escape the pandemic blues. And I know you'll enjoy the interview with Debbie. So happy writing, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. You might also like the backlist episodes and show notes available at thecreativepenn.com/podcast. You can also get your free author blueprint at thecreativepenn.com/blueprint. If you'd like to connect, you can tweet me at The Creative Penn or find me on Facebook at The Creative Penn. See you next time.